Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. If this is your very first time here, stop scrolling for 1 second, because I promise you, this episode is going to feel different. My name is Alex, and this is English in Fluency, the podcast where we practice real, natural English together, every single day. No boring grammar books, no stress, just good stories and good listening. And today, I want to ask you something before we even start. Have you ever moved to a brand new city, all alone, with just one suitcase and a heart full of nerves? Maybe you have. Maybe you haven't. But by the end of today's episode, you're going to feel like you did. Because I'm going to tell you a story. A real, emotional, human story. And along the way, we're going to learn some amazing English words and phrases together. The kind of English that people actually use when they talk, not the stiff, robotic English from old textbooks. So, grab your coffee, or your tea, or whatever you're drinking right now. Get comfortable. Maybe you're walking. Maybe you're cooking. Maybe you're just lying in bed. It doesn't matter, because this episode is made for your ears only. Today's level is B1, so if you already understand most of what I'm saying right now, congratulations, you're exactly where you need to be. And if a few words feel new or tricky, don't worry at all. That's actually the best part, because that's where the real learning happens. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump straight into it. So before I tell you the story, let me just say something quickly. Something small, but honestly kind of important to me. A lot of you write to me and say, Alex, I understand English when I read it, but when I listen, everything sounds so fast, and the words all blend together, and I feel lost after just a few seconds. And you know what? I completely understand that feeling, because learning to listen is different from learning to read. When we read, we can stop, we can go back, we can take our time. But when we listen, the words just keep coming, one after another. And if you miss one, it can feel like you missed everything. So that's exactly why this podcast exists, to give your ears daily practice, a little bit every day. So slowly, without even noticing it, your brain starts to catch more and more. It's kind of like exercise for your ears, honestly. You wouldn't expect to run a marathon after one day at the gym, right? Same thing here. So just relax, listen, and let the story carry you. Okay, now, let me introduce you to someone. Her name is Mia. Mia is 26 years old. And at the moment our story begins, she is standing outside a train station in a city she has never lived in before, holding one heavy suitcase in her right hand and a small backpack on her shoulders. The sky above her is gray, a little bit cloudy, not raining yet, but it feels like it might start any minute. And Mia is looking around, slowly turning her head left, then right, then left again. Because, honestly, she has absolutely no idea where to go. This is her very first day in this new city. She just got a new job here, a job she worked really hard for, a job that she was so excited about just a few weeks ago. But now, standing here, with her suitcase feeling heavier every second, she doesn't feel excited anymore. She feels something else, something a little bit heavier, a little bit tighter in her chest. Have you ever felt that? That mix of excitement and fear at the exact same time? In English, we sometimes say someone has butterflies in their stomach. It's a lovely little expression, and it means you feel nervous, but in a soft, fluttery way. Like there are actual butterflies flying around inside you. So, right now, Mia definitely has butterflies in her stomach. Big time. Let's pause right here for just a second, because I want you to try something with me. I want you to repeat this sentence out loud, even if you're in public. Even if people look at you a little strange, just do it. Trust me. Say this after me. I have butterflies in my stomach. Go on. Say it. I have butterflies in my stomach. Perfect. Now you own that phrase. It's yours now. Use it the next time you feel nervous before something big. A job interview, a first date, a presentation at work, anything at all. All right, back to Mia. She takes a deep breath, pulls her phone out of her jacket pocket, and opens the map. Her new apartment is supposed to be about 20 minutes away, but honestly, walking with a heavy suitcase for 20 minutes in a city she doesn't know sounds exhausting already. Still, she doesn't want to spend money on a taxi on her very first day because, well, she's trying to save money for her new life here. So she starts walking. The streets are busy, full of people rushing past her, cars honking somewhere in the distance, the smell of coffee coming from a small shop on the corner. Everything feels new, strange, and a tiny bit overwhelming. And here's another useful word for you: overwhelming. When something is overwhelming, it means there's just too much happening at once, too much information, too many feelings, and you don't quite know how to handle it all. New cities can definitely feel overwhelming, especially on the first day. As Mia walks, dragging her suitcase behind her over the uneven pavement, she starts thinking about her old life, back in her hometown, where she knew every street, every shop, every face. She thinks about her mother, who cried a little bit at the airport, even though she tried to hide it. She thinks about her best friend since childhood, a woman named Sarah, who hugged her so tightly at the train station back home and whispered, "You're going to be amazing there. I just know it." And thinking about all of this, Mia feels a small lump form in her throat. You know that feeling, right? That tight feeling in your throat when you're trying really hard not to cry? In English, we call that a lump in your throat. It's such a visual way to describe an emotion, isn't it? Like there's literally a small ball stuck right there. Now here's a quick little practice moment for you. Try to think of a time when you felt a lump in your throat. Maybe it was saying goodbye to someone. Maybe it was watching an emotional movie. Maybe it was something completely different. You don't need to say it out loud. Just think about it for a second, and try to describe it to yourself in English, even with simple words. That's how real fluency grows, little by little, thought by thought. Okay, so Mia finally arrives at her new apartment building. It's an old building, a bit worn out, with a red door that has lost some of its paint over the years, but there's something charming about it too. Something that makes her smile just slightly, despite everything. She finds the key under the doormat, exactly where the landlord told her it would be, and she opens the door for the very first time. The apartment is small, honestly. Smaller than she imagined from the photos online. But it's clean, and there's a big window in the living room that lets in soft afternoon light. She drops her suitcase right there in the middle of the floor and just stands still for a moment, looking around at this empty space that is now, somehow, her home. And this is where something really interesting happens in the story, something that I think a lot of you will connect with. Instead of feeling happy, Mia suddenly feels incredibly lonely. She sits down on the floor, right next to her suitcase, and she just stays there for a while, not really doing anything, just sitting, staring at the blank white walls. Loneliness is such a heavy feeling, isn't it? It's different from just being alone. You can be alone and feel totally fine, completely at peace, even. But loneliness, real loneliness, is when you feel alone even though you might want company, even though somewhere deep inside, you're craving connection with another human being. Let's take that word, craving, and really understand it together, because it's such a useful word for everyday English. When you crave something, it means you want it really badly, almost like a strong hunger, but not always for food. You can crave chocolate, sure. That's the most common way people use it. But you can also crave attention. You can crave adventure. You can crave a quiet moment alone. Mia, sitting there on her apartment floor, is craving connection. She wants to talk to someone, anyone, but she doesn't know a single soul in this entire city. All right, quick practice time again. Finish this sentence in your own head, or even out loud if you're brave enough. Right now, I am craving. Maybe it's craving your favorite food, maybe craving sleep, maybe craving a vacation somewhere warm. Whatever it is, try to say the full sentence in English. This kind of small daily practice really does add up over time. I promise you that. So, Mia sits there for a while, and eventually, she decides she can't just sit on the floor feeling sorry for herself all evening. She stands up, wipes her hands on her jeans, and decides to go out and explore the neighborhood a little bit. Maybe find something to eat, since her stomach has started making some rather embarrassing noises. She walks out of her building and turns left, just picking a direction randomly. No real plan in mind. And after walking for about 10 minutes, she notices a small cafe on the corner of the street, with warm yellow light glowing from the windows, and a chalkboard sign outside advertising something called a cinnamon bun special. Honestly, the smell alone is enough to pull her inside. She pushes open the door, and a small bell rings above her head, announcing her arrival. The cafe is cozy, not too crowded, just a handful of people scattered at different tables, some reading books, some typing on laptops, one older man doing a crossword puzzle by the window. And behind the counter, there's a young man, maybe around her age, with messy brown hair and a warm, easy smile, wiping down the counter with a cloth. His name tag says Leo. Now, this is where our second main character enters the story, and I have to say, I really like Leo. There's something instantly kind about him. Something in the way he looks up when the bell rings and says, without any hesitation at all, "Welcome in. Take any seat you like." His voice is friendly, casual, the kind of voice that immediately makes a stranger feel a little bit more comfortable in a new place. Mia gives him a small, tired smile and finds a table near the window. A few minutes later, Leo comes over with a menu, and he notices something. Maybe the tiredness in her eyes, or the suitcase-shaped exhaustion in her posture, and he says, "You look like you've had quite a day." Mia laughs a little, a real laugh this time, the first one since she left her hometown this morning, and she says, "You have absolutely no idea." And just like that, a conversation begins. Leo asks if she's new around here, and she explains that yes, she literally just arrived a few hours ago, moved here for a new job, doesn't know a single person in the whole city. And Leo, instead of just nodding politely and walking away like a lot of people might do, actually pulls out the chair across from her and says, "Mind if I sit for a second? We're not too busy right now." Isn't that such a small thing, but such a big thing at the same time? Sometimes, One small act of kindness from a stranger can completely change how we feel about an entire situation. Have you ever experienced that? A stranger who was just a little bit kind to you at exactly the right moment, and it changed your whole day? That's exactly what's happening for Mia right now. They talk for almost 20 minutes, Leo telling her a bit about the neighborhood, which streets to avoid at night, which little shops sell the best fresh bread, which park is the nicest for a quiet walk on a Sunday morning. And Mia starts to feel, for the first time since she arrived, that maybe, just maybe, this city isn't going to swallow her whole after all. Maybe there's a place for her here too. Let's grab another useful phrase from this part of the story. I said Mia felt like the city might swallow her whole. This is a lovely, dramatic little expression we use in English when we talk about a place, or sometimes a situation, feeling so big and overwhelming that it seems like it could completely consume us, make us disappear. You might say, I felt like the crowd would swallow me whole, or this huge project at work is going to swallow me whole if I'm not careful. It's a strong image, but it captures a real feeling perfectly. Now, here's a fun little practice challenge for you. Try building your own sentence using the phrase, swallow me whole. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be complicated. Just try it. Maybe something about a busy city, a big task, a huge exam. Say it out loud right now, even quietly. Okay, moving forward with our story. Before Leo goes back to work behind the counter, he does something really sweet. He grabs a napkin and, using a pen from his apron pocket, he writes down his phone number and he slides it across the table to Mia. He says, Look, if you ever need anything, seriously, anything, directions, recommendations, or honestly, just someone to talk to on a lonely evening, text me. No pressure at all, okay? And Mia looks at that napkin, at those simple handwritten numbers, and something inside her chest loosens just slightly, like a knot slowly starting to untie itself. That's such a real feeling too, right? That physical sensation of relief when something stressful finally eases up a little. In English, we often say something like, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, when stress or worry suddenly becomes lighter. Mia, holding that little napkin in her hand, definitely feels a small weight lift off her shoulders. She finishes her cinnamon bun, which, by the way, turns out to be absolutely delicious, and she walks back to her new apartment as the sky slowly turns from gray to a soft orange and pink, the sun setting somewhere behind the tall buildings. And that night, lying on a mattress with no sheets yet, using her jacket as a pillow because she hasn't unpacked anything at all, Mia actually falls asleep with a small smile on her face. Not because everything is perfect, not because her nerves have completely disappeared, but because she met one kind person, and sometimes, just sometimes, one kind person is enough to make a scary new beginning feel just a little bit more possible. All right, let's pause the story here for a moment, and let's do a quick little check on what we've learned so far. But don't worry, I'm not going to quiz you like some strict teacher. I just want you to think back for a second. Can you remember what it means to have butterflies in your stomach? And what about a lump in your throat? And do you remember the phrase about feeling like something might swallow you whole? If you remember even one or two of these, that's honestly fantastic progress. If you don't remember them all, that's completely fine too, because I promise we're going to use these phrases again before this episode ends, so they'll stick in your memory even more. Now let's continue with Mia's story, because things are about to get a little more interesting, and yes, a little more challenging for her too. The next morning, Mia wakes up early. Way too early, actually, because her body clock is still confused from all the stress of moving. Today is her very first day at her new job, a marketing position at a company she's been dreaming about working for since she was still in university. She puts on the outfit she planned days ago, something professional but comfortable, and she stands in front of the small bathroom mirror, practicing her introduction one more time. "Hi, I'm Mia. I'm so excited to be joining the team." She says it 3 times, 4 times, adjusting her tone slightly each time, trying to sound confident, even though her stomach is doing somersaults again. A somersault, by the way, if you don't already know this word, is when your body rolls forward in a circle, like gymnasts do. And when we say our stomach is doing somersaults, we simply mean we feel extremely nervous, like there's actual movement happening inside us. It's basically a stronger cousin of the butterfly's expression we learned earlier. She arrives at the office building 15 minutes early because, honestly, who wants to be late on their very first day, right? The building is tall, made of glass and steel, reflecting the morning sunlight in a way that almost blinds her for a second as she walks toward the entrance. Inside, everything feels busy, professional, a little intimidating. People walking quickly with coffee cups in their hands, phones pressed against their ears, badges swinging from lanyards around their necks. At the reception desk, she gives her name, and a friendly receptionist calls someone to come down and collect her. A few minutes later, a woman appears, walking briskly across the lobby with a warm smile and an outstretched hand. This is Grace, Mia's new manager. Grace looks to be in her early 40s, wearing a sharp blazer, her hair pulled back neatly, and there's an energy about her, a kind of calm confidence that immediately makes Mia feel both impressed and slightly nervous at the same time. Grace shows Mia around the office, introducing her to different team members along the way, most of whose names Mia immediately forgets because, honestly, there are just too many new faces at once. By the time they reach Mia's new desk, her brain feels completely full, like a cup that's been filled right up to the very top. One more drop, and it would overflow. That's actually a really nice way to describe feeling mentally overwhelmed, by the way. You could say, "My brain is full," or even better, "I feel like my head is spinning." Have you ever felt like your head is spinning? Maybe after a long day of learning something new, or after too much information all at once? It's such a common feeling, and such a useful phrase to describe it. Throughout the morning, Mia sits at her new desk, trying to absorb everything: company software, team structures, ongoing projects, deadlines, all of it coming at her rapidly. Around noon, Grace stops by and asks if Mia would like to join the team for lunch, and Mia, grateful for any small kindness at this point, agrees immediately. At the lunch table, sitting with about 6 new colleagues she barely knows yet, Mia mostly listens, nodding along, laughing at jokes she doesn't fully understand yet, because she doesn't know the office humor or the inside references. It's a bit like being at a party where everyone knows each other except you. Have you ever been in that situation, surrounded by people, but still somehow feeling completely alone? It's a strange, uncomfortable kind of loneliness, isn't it? Being surrounded by noise and conversation, yet still feeling invisible. But then, something small happens that shifts the mood a little. One of her colleagues, a guy named Theo, who has bright red curly hair and an easy, goofy sense of humor, notices Mia staying quiet, and instead of ignoring it, he leans over and asks her directly, "So, Mia, what made you want to work in marketing anyway?" And suddenly, she has something to talk about, something she actually knows well, something she's passionate about. She starts explaining her love for storytelling, for finding the right words to connect with people. And as she talks, she notices the table actually listening, actually interested. And for the first time that day, she feels like maybe she does belong here after all. Let's grab one more phrase from this section: the idea of feeling like you belong. Belonging is such an important human feeling. It means feeling accepted, feeling like you fit in somewhere, like you're not an outsider anymore. You might say, after a few weeks, "I finally started to feel like I belonged at my new school," or "I've never really felt like I belong in big crowds." It's a simple word, belong, but it carries so much emotional weight. Quick little practice moment again. Think about a place where you truly feel like you belong. Maybe it's your home. Maybe it's with a certain group of friends. Maybe it's somewhere completely unexpected, like a specific coffee shop or a hiking trail. Try forming the sentence in your head. I feel like I belong when... Okay, let's continue. The first week passes by for Mia in a strange kind of blur. Busy days full of learning, mistakes, small victories, and a slowly growing comfort with her new surroundings. Every evening, exhausted, she walks back to her small apartment, and more often than not, she finds herself stopping by that same little cafe, the one with the warm yellow lights, partly because the coffee really is fantastic, but mostly, if she's being honest with herself, because she enjoys seeing Leo's friendly face behind the counter. They start talking more and more each time she visits. Easy, comfortable conversations about nothing in particular and everything at once. Her new job, his plans to maybe open his own small bakery someday, funny stories from their childhoods, embarrassing memories they probably shouldn't be sharing with someone they just met, but somehow feel completely comfortable sharing anyway. There's a certain kind of connection that happens between two people sometimes, a connection that doesn't need much time to grow. It just clicks almost instantly. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone where conversation just flows naturally, without any awkward silences or forced small talk? By the end of her second week, Mia and Leo have become genuine friends, texting almost every day, meeting up not just at the cafe, but sometimes for evening walks in the nearby park Leo told her about on that very first day. Slowly, the city that once felt so cold and overwhelming starts to feel a little warmer, a little more like home. But, and there's always a but in a good story, right? Things are not perfect at Mia's job. About 3 weeks into her new position, she gets assigned her very first big project, creating a marketing campaign for a new product launch, something the whole team has been anticipating for months. Grace explains the project with clear excitement in her voice, trusting Mia with real responsibility despite her being so new to the team. And Mia, determined to prove herself, throws herself completely into the work, staying late most evenings, skipping lunch breaks, barely even messaging Leo, because she's so focused on getting everything perfect. The pressure builds slowly, but steadily, like water gradually filling a glass until it's right at the very edge, ready to spill over at any moment. And then, one Thursday afternoon, during a big team meeting where Mia is presenting her campaign ideas to senior management for the very first time, something goes terribly wrong. Her laptop, the very device holding her entire presentation, freezes completely, the screen frozen on a random slide that makes absolutely no sense without her narration to explain it. Her heart starts pounding immediately, so loud she's almost certain everyone in the room can hear it. Her hands, resting on the table in front of her, start to shake slightly. This is the moment where we say someone's mind goes blank. It's such a relatable phrase, isn't it? When you're so nervous, so panicked, that suddenly you can't remember anything at all, not even the simplest things you knew perfectly just moments before. Mia's mind goes completely blank, standing there in front of 10 senior executives, her broken laptop screen behind her, silence stretching through the room like it might never end. Let's practice that phrase together. My mind went blank. Try saying it out loud, maybe adding your own little story to it. Perhaps during an exam, perhaps during a public speech, perhaps just forgetting someone's name, right when you're introducing them to a friend. My mind went blank when... Finish that sentence for yourself. Grace, sensing the awkward silence stretching too long, gently jumps in, saying, "Why don't we take a short break while we sort out the technical issue and everyone can grab some coffee?" It's a small mercy, a tiny lifeline thrown to Mia in her moment of panic. But the damage, at least in Mia's own mind, already feels done. She rushes out of the meeting room, finds the nearest bathroom, and locks herself in a stall, breathing heavily, fighting back tears that are threatening to spill over at any second. This is such a human moment, isn't it? That feeling of complete embarrassment, of wanting the ground to just open up and swallow you whole. Remember that phrase from earlier? It fits perfectly here, too. Mia stands there, staring at her own reflection in the bathroom mirror a few minutes later, feeling like an absolute failure, like she's ruined everything, like her one big chance has completely slipped through her fingers. That phrase, "slipped through her fingers," is such a beautiful, sad little image, isn't it? It describes something you wanted so badly, something that felt so close, so almost within reach, but somehow it escaped anyway, like trying to hold water in your open hands. You might say, "My chance at that promotion slipped through my fingers," or "the opportunity slipped through his fingers before he even realized what was happening." Eventually, Grace finds Mia in the hallway outside the bathroom, and instead of anger or disappointment, which Mia was fully expecting and honestly bracing herself for, Grace's face shows something much softer, something like genuine understanding. She says, "Technology fails all of us sometimes. That's not on you at all. What matters is how you handle it, and honestly, the way you calmly asked for a moment to fix things instead of panicking out loud, that showed real composure. Come back in, finish your presentation. We're all still rooting for you." Rooting for someone, by the way, is such a warm little phrase in English. It means supporting someone, wanting them to succeed, cheering for them, even if only quietly in your heart. You might say, "I know this interview is scary, but I'm rooting for you the whole way." Or, "Even though we live in different countries now, I'm still rooting for my old team back home." It's a phrase full of encouragement and warmth. Mia takes a deep breath, wipes her eyes carefully so her makeup doesn't smudge too badly, and walks back into that meeting room with her shoulders pulled back just slightly straighter than before. The laptop issue gets fixed within a couple of minutes, and she finishes her presentation, a little shakier than she'd hoped, her voice trembling here and there, but she gets through it. Every single slide, every single point she'd worked so hard to prepare. And here's the thing about stories like this, about real life in general, actually. Sometimes the moments we're most afraid of, the moments that feel like complete disasters while they're happening, turn out to matter so much less than we think they will. A few executives ask thoughtful questions afterward, genuinely engaged with her ideas, and Grace even mentions, once everyone else has left the room, that Mia handled the pressure impressively for someone so new to the team. That evening, completely emotionally drained, Mia walks straight to the little cafe instead of going home first. She pushes open the door, and Leo, seeing her face immediately, doesn't even need to ask what happened. He just walks around the counter, gives her a genuine warm hug, and says, "Rough day, huh? Sit down. Coffee's on me tonight." And sitting there, telling Leo the entire embarrassing, stressful, exhausting story of her day, Mia starts to feel that familiar tightness in her chest finally begin to loosen. That's the beauty of having someone to talk to, isn't it? Sometimes we don't need advice, we don't need solutions, we just need someone willing to listen. Someone who makes us feel a little less alone with our struggles. Do you have someone like that in your life? Someone you can call after a difficult day, just to talk everything through? Let's take a small break from the story again for a quick practice moment. I want you to imagine you had a really difficult day, similar to Mia's. Try describing it out loud in simple English. You could start with something like, "Today was such a rough day," or "I had the worst presentation of my life today." Don't worry about being perfect. Just practice expressing emotion through simple, natural sentences. This is exactly the kind of speaking practice that builds real confidence over time. Now, let's continue with the story, because things are about to take a really lovely turn. Over the following weeks, Mia's confidence at work steadily grows. The failed presentation, instead of destroying her reputation like she feared it might, actually becomes something of a turning point. Colleagues who witnessed her calm recovery start treating her with a bit more respect, a bit more trust. Grace begins giving her more responsibility, more challenging projects, and slowly, piece by piece, Mia starts to genuinely feel like a valuable part of the team, not just the new girl trying desperately to prove herself. Meanwhile, her friendship with Leo deepens too, in ways that neither of them quite planned or expected. What started as simple cafe conversations gradually turns into something warmer, something neither of them wants to name too quickly, afraid that naming it might somehow break the easy magic they've found together. They start spending weekends exploring the city together, Leo showing her hidden little spots most tourists never find. A secret rooftop with an amazing sunset view, a tiny bookshop tucked between two much larger buildings, a farmer's market that only happens every second Sunday of the month. One particular Sunday evening, sitting together on that secret rooftop, Leo showed her weeks earlier, watching the sky slowly shift through shades of orange, pink, and finally, deep purple. Mia turns to Leo and says something she's been thinking for a while, but hasn't quite found the courage to say out loud. She says, "You know, when I first arrived here, I was so scared, so completely certain I'd made a huge mistake moving to this city." And Leo, watching her carefully, softly asks, "And now? How do you feel now?" Mia takes a long pause, watching the last bit of orange sunlight disappear behind distant buildings, and she finally says, "Now, I think this might actually be exactly where I'm supposed to be." And Leo, smiling that same warm, easy smile from their very first meeting weeks ago, gently takes her hand and says, "For what it's worth, I'm really glad you ended up here too." It's a simple, quiet moment. Nothing dramatic, nothing overly romantic in a movie sort of way. Just two people sitting together, watching a sunset, feeling genuinely grateful for the unexpected paths that brought them together. Isn't it amazing sometimes how the scariest beginnings can lead to the most beautiful, unexpected endings? Mia arrived in this city terrified, lonely, uncertain, dragging a heavy suitcase and an even heavier heart. But slowly, through small kindnesses, through challenges she didn't think she could survive, through unexpected friendships and quiet, warm evenings, she built something real here, a career she's proud of, a city that finally feels like home, and a person who makes even the hardest days feel a little bit lighter. Now, I could honestly end the story right there, on that lovely rooftop, with that perfect sunset. But real life, as you probably already know, rarely wraps up quite so neatly, does it? There's usually one more twist, one more little bump in the road, before things truly settle. So let me tell you what happened next, because I think this next part might be the most important lesson in Mia's whole story. About a month after that rooftop evening, Mia's big project, the one she'd been working on since that disastrous frozen laptop presentation, finally reached its launch day. Weeks of preparation, countless late nights, endless revisions, all of it was about to be tested in the real world. The campaign was going live that morning, and the entire team gathered in the main office to watch the numbers roll in, refreshing screens nervously, waiting to see how the public would react to something Mia had poured so much of herself into. For the first hour, everything looked promising. Steady engagement, some positive comments trickling in online, a few small shares here and there. Mia allowed herself a tiny bit of hope, a small, cautious kind of hope, the type you almost don't want to fully feel yet, just in case it gets taken away. But then, around midday, something completely unexpected happened. A minor mistake, something so small that Mia herself hadn't even noticed it during all those weeks of checking and rechecking. A tiny error in one of the promotional graphics, a misplaced number that made a promotional offer look far more generous than it was actually supposed to be. Within an hour, that small mistake had spread everywhere online, people sharing it, laughing about it, some being kind about the confusion, others being far less kind, leaving harsh comments about the company's carelessness. Mia sat frozen at her desk, watching notification after notification pile up, her stomach twisting into what felt like an impossible knot. This is the kind of moment where we might say someone feels sick to their stomach, that heavy, nauseous feeling you get when something has gone seriously, publicly wrong, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to take it back. Let's grab that phrase together, sick to your stomach. It's such a strong physical way of describing anxiety or dread, and it's incredibly common in everyday English. You might say, I felt sick to my stomach when I realized I'd sent that email to the wrong person. Or, waiting for the exam results made me feel sick to my stomach all week long. Try repeating it now, sick to my stomach, and maybe think of a moment in your own life where that phrase would fit perfectly. Grace called an emergency meeting almost immediately, and Mia walked into that meeting room feeling like she was walking toward her own execution, her legs heavy, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her ears. She fully expected to be blamed, possibly even removed from the project entirely, maybe even let go from the company altogether. Though logically she knew that was probably a bit dramatic. Fear rarely listens to logic, does it? But something different happened instead. Grace, calm as always, gathered the team and said, "Mistakes happen, especially under pressure and tight deadlines. What matters now is how quickly and gracefully we respond." Instead of pointing fingers, she turned to Mia directly and asked, "What do you think we should do?" And in that single question, Mia felt something shift inside her. Not relief exactly, not yet, but something like trust. The realization that Grace genuinely believed she was capable of fixing this herself. Taking a shaky breath, Mia suggested they release an honest, slightly humorous correction post immediately, something that acknowledged the mistake openly, instead of trying to quietly hide it or pretend it never happened. She argued that people generally respond far better to businesses that admit their errors with a bit of humility and humor, rather than businesses that try to sweep problems under the rug. That phrase, by the way, to sweep something under the rug, means trying to hide a problem instead of properly dealing with it, like literally sweeping dirt under a rug so nobody sees it, even though it's obviously still there. The team agreed, and within 20 minutes, they posted a corrected graphic along with a light-hearted caption admitting the mix-up, something along the lines of, "Oops, our numbers got a little too generous there. Here's the real deal. Thanks for keeping us honest." To everyone's genuine surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People appreciated the honesty, appreciated the humor, and several commenters even said the quick, friendly correction made them trust the company more, not less. By the end of that chaotic day, the campaign numbers had actually recovered, and in some strange twist of fate, even improved slightly, thanks to all the extra attention the little mistake had accidentally generated. Grace pulled Mia aside privately before everyone went home that evening and said, "You know, a lot of new employees would have completely panicked today, frozen up, maybe even tried to blame someone else. But you stayed calm, you took responsibility, and you found a genuinely smart solution under real pressure. That's exactly the kind of thinking this company needs more of." Hearing those words, something inside Mia's chest loosened again. That same feeling of a weight lifting off her shoulders we talked about earlier in the story. Except this time it felt even more powerful, because this time she'd truly earned it. Through her own effort, her own courage, her own quick thinking under genuine pressure. That evening, walking home slowly through streets that now felt completely familiar to her, streets she could have walked with her eyes closed after all these months, Mia found herself smiling softly to herself, replaying Grace's words over and over in her mind. She thought about that terrified young woman standing outside the train station all those months ago, suitcase in hand, absolutely certain she'd made the biggest mistake of her entire life. And she thought about how far she'd come since then, not in distance, but in confidence, in resilience, in genuine belonging. Resilience, by the way, is such a beautiful word, and definitely worth adding to your vocabulary today if it isn't already there. Resilience means the ability to recover quickly from difficulties, to bounce back after something goes wrong, almost like a rubber ball that bounces right back up after being dropped. You might say she showed incredible resilience after losing her job, finding an even better one within just a few months. Or, children often show amazing resilience, recovering from difficult situations faster than adults sometimes expect. Let's practice that word together too. Think about a time in your own life when you showed resilience, a time when something difficult happened, but you managed to bounce back, maybe stronger than before. Try forming a simple sentence about it in your head. I showed resilience when... When Mia finally reached the little cafe that evening, Leo was already waiting outside, leaning casually against the doorframe, 2 coffees in hand, one clearly meant for her. Word travels fast in a small circle of new friends, apparently, and he'd already heard a rough version of the day's chaos from a mutual friend at Mia's office. Instead of asking 100 questions right away, he simply handed her the coffee, wrapped an arm gently around her shoulders, and said, "Come on, let's walk. You can tell me everything or nothing at all, whatever you need tonight." And that, right there, is honestly one of the sweetest kinds of support a person can offer another, isn't it? Not pushing, not demanding explanations, just being present, just offering quiet company, and letting the other person decide how much they want to share. Do you have someone like that in your life? Someone who simply shows up, without needing all the details right away? They walked together for almost an hour that evening, weaving through familiar streets, past the bakery Leo still dreamed about owning someday, past the little park with the bench where they'd shared so many quiet conversations over the past months, past the train station where Mia's whole journey in this city had first begun. And somewhere during that walk, without any big dramatic moment, without any grand romantic gesture, Mia simply reached over and took Leo's hand, and he laced his fingers gently through hers, like it was the most natural thing in the entire world, like they'd been doing it forever, even though this was actually the very first time. Sometimes, the most meaningful moments in life aren't loud or dramatic at all, are they? Sometimes they're quiet, simple, almost unnoticeable if you're not paying close attention. A hand slipping gently into another hand during an ordinary evening walk. That's exactly the kind of moment this was for Mia and Leo. Small, quiet, but absolutely unforgettable. A few weeks later, Mia finally felt ready to invite her mother to visit the city for the very first time since she'd moved. Standing at the train station, the very same station where her own journey had started months earlier, Mia waited nervously, but this time, the nervousness felt different, lighter, more like anticipation than fear. When her mother finally stepped off the train, looking around with wide, curious eyes, Mia rushed forward and wrapped her in the tightest hug she could manage. Walking her mother through the city over the following days, showing her the office where she now worked with genuine confidence, the little cafe where her whole new life had quietly begun, the rooftop where she'd watched that unforgettable sunset with Leo, Mia realized something important, something worth sharing with you today. This city, the one that had once felt so cold, so overwhelming, so completely unfamiliar, had slowly, patiently become home. Not because the buildings changed, not because the streets became less busy, but because she had grown, adapted, found her people, and built a genuine life here, piece by piece, day by day, conversation by conversation. Her mother, standing beside her on that same rooftop weeks after Mia's own first visit there, watching the sunset paint the sky in familiar shades of orange and pink, turned to her daughter and said quietly, "I was so worried about you leaving home. But look at you now. You've built something really beautiful here." And Mia, feeling that same lump in her throat we talked about earlier, except this time from happiness rather than fear, simply squeezed her mother's hand and whispered, "It wasn't easy, Mom, but I think it was absolutely worth it." There's one more little thread in this story I want to share with you, because I think it's honestly one of the sweetest parts, and it happened around the same time Mia's mother came to visit. You remember Leo, right? Our friendly cafe worker with the messy brown hair and the dream of opening his own small bakery someday? Well, for months, that dream had just been quiet talk. The kind of thing people mention casually over coffee, but never quite believe will actually happen. Sometimes, when we want something really badly, we almost protect ourselves by not taking it too seriously. Because if we never truly try, we can never really fail either. Does that make sense? It's a strange little defense mechanism a lot of us use without even realizing it. But one evening, while Mia and Leo were sitting on their usual bench in the park, watching evening joggers pass by and pigeons fighting over dropped crumbs nearby, Mia turned to him and said something that honestly caught him completely off guard. She said, "Why haven't you actually looked into it? The bakery? I mean, seriously looked into it, not just dreamed about it." Leo laughed a little, a nervous kind of laugh, and gave the usual excuses. Not enough money saved yet, too risky, too complicated, the timing just isn't right. And Mia, who by this point in the story had learned quite a lot about facing fear head-on, simply said, "Timing is never perfectly right, Leo. I learned that the hard way myself." That phrase, "to face something head-on," is such a strong, useful expression in English. It means confronting a problem or a fear directly, honestly, without avoiding it or making excuses. You might say, instead of avoiding the difficult conversation, she decided to face it head-on. Or, learning a new language means facing your fear of making mistakes head-on, again and again, until it stops feeling so scary. That conversation on the park bench planted a seed, and over the following weeks, Leo started quietly researching small business loans, talking to a few local bakery owners about their own beginnings, even sketching rough little floor plans on napkins during his slow shifts at the cafe. The same kind of napkins he'd once used to write down his phone number for a nervous, lonely stranger months earlier. Life has such a funny way of connecting these small moments, doesn't it? Threading them together in ways we never expect at the time. One Saturday morning, Leo showed up at Mia's apartment, practically bouncing with excitement, an energy she'd genuinely never seen from him before. He explained that a small shop space had become available just 2 streets away from the cafe, and the price, while still a little frightening, actually seemed possible if he was careful and patient. "Would you come look at it with me?" he asked, almost shyly. I trust your opinion more than almost anyone else's at this point. Standing together inside that empty little shop space later that afternoon, dusty windows letting in soft streams of afternoon light, cracked old tile floors that clearly needed serious work, Leo turned in a slow circle, imagining out loud where the ovens might go, where the display counter could sit, where customers might wait in a cozy little line on cold winter mornings, breathing in the smell of fresh bread before they even stepped inside. Mia watched him, this normally calm, easygoing guy, suddenly so animated, so genuinely alive with excitement, and she felt something warm bloom in her chest. Watching someone she cared about finally chase something they'd wanted for so long. When something blooms in your chest, by the way, it simply means a warm, positive feeling grows or spreads inside you, almost like a flower slowly opening. You might say, pride bloomed in her chest as she watched her daughter graduate, or a quiet happiness bloomed inside him as he finally finished the project he'd worked on for years. It's such a gentle, lovely way to describe positive emotion building up inside you. Of course, starting a small business is never quite as simple or romantic as standing in an empty shop imagining possibilities. Over the following weeks, Leo faced endless paperwork, nervous meetings with bank representatives, moments of serious doubt, where he almost convinced himself the whole idea was foolish and impossible. There were evenings where he'd show up at Mia's apartment looking utterly exhausted, dropping onto her small couch with a heavy sigh, saying things like, "Maybe I'm just not cut out for this kind of thing." That phrase, "not cut out for something," means someone doesn't have the right qualities or personality for a particular task or role. You might hear someone say, "I don't think I'm cut out for public speaking. My hands shake too much." Or, "Honestly, some people just aren't cut out for city life. They need more quiet and space around them." It's a common, useful expression for describing whether something truly fits who we are. During these difficult moments, Mia found herself in the interesting position of offering the exact same kind of quiet support Leo had given her all those months earlier, back when she was the nervous, uncertain one, freshly arrived in a strange city. She'd sit beside him, sometimes not saying much at all, just being present, occasionally reminding him gently of how far he'd already come, how many obstacles he'd already pushed through just to reach this point. Relationships work best that way sometimes, don't they? This back and forth of support, first one person leaning on the other, and later the roles quietly reversing when life demands it. Eventually, after nearly 2 months of hard work, stress, and a few sleepless nights, Leo secured the funding, signed the lease on that small dusty shop, and officially began renovations. Mia helped whenever she could after work, painting walls on weekends, helping choose paint colors and simple decorations, even helping him practice, of all things, a short speech he wanted to give at the small opening event he was already dreaming about, still weeks away. Watching him practice that little speech in the empty, half-painted shop one evening, stumbling over his words nervously, despite having said them 100 times already in his head, Mia couldn't help but smile, remembering her own nervous rehearsals in front of her bathroom mirror all those months ago. Before her very first day at a job she'd been so terrified of starting. It's funny, isn't it? How we all experience these same universal moments of fear and hope, no matter how different our individual stories might look on the surface. A few weeks later, the little bakery, which Leo eventually decided to name after his late grandmother, a woman who had apparently taught him everything he knew about baking as a child, finally opened its doors for the very first time. The opening morning was chilly, a light mist hanging in the early air, but a surprisingly large crowd gathered outside anyway, drawn by the delicious smell of fresh bread drifting from the open door, and, honestly, by weeks of enthusiastic word of mouth throughout the neighborhood. Mia stood near the front of that small crowd, watching Leo nervously cut a simple ribbon across the doorway, his hands shaking slightly, not from fear this time, but from pure, overwhelming excitement. When their eyes met across the small gathered crowd, he gave her a small, grateful nod, a silent thank you that needed absolutely no words at all. Some connections between people go far deeper than spoken language ever could, don't they? Let's take a short practice pause here, because I think this moment deserves it. Try describing a time when you supported someone through something difficult, or a time when someone supported you the same way. Use simple English, out loud if you can manage it right now. Something like, "I helped my friend when she was struggling with," or "My brother supported me when I was trying to." Building these small personal sentences is honestly one of the fastest ways to make new vocabulary feel truly yours, rather than just words you memorized from a podcast episode. As the weeks passed, Leo's little bakery slowly became a genuine neighborhood favorite, regulars stopping by every single morning for fresh bread, students studying quietly with pastries and coffee during long afternoons, elderly neighbors gathering for their regular little chats over tea and cake. And Mia, continuing to thrive in her own career, eventually earned a small promotion at work too. Grace, recognizing her steady growth, her calm handling of pressure, and her genuinely creative thinking under difficult circumstances. One evening, many months after that very first nervous day standing outside the train station, Mia found herself sitting once again on that familiar secret rooftop with Leo, this time not watching a sunset, but the soft, twinkling lights of the city slowly appearing below them as evening settled in fully. She thought back through everything: the loneliness of that very first night on her apartment floor, the panic of her frozen laptop screen, the sickening dread of that public marketing mistake, the quiet joy of watching Leo's dream slowly become reality. So much had happened, so much had changed, and yet somehow, sitting right there in that exact spot, everything finally felt settled, calm, genuinely peaceful. Leo, noticing the thoughtful, faraway look on her face, gently nudged her shoulder and asked, "Penny for your thoughts. That's such a charming little English expression, by the way. Penny for your thoughts. A simple, friendly way of asking someone what they're thinking about, especially when they seem lost in deep thought. You could say it to a friend who suddenly goes quiet during a conversation, or to a partner staring thoughtfully out a window. It's old-fashioned, sure, but still used warmly today." Mia smiled softly and said, "I was just thinking about how scared I was when I first got here, and how completely different everything feels now." Leo wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her a little closer against the cool evening air, and said quietly, "That's kind of the whole point of taking a scary leap, isn't it? You never actually know beforehand that it's going to work out. You just have to trust yourself enough to try anyway." To take a leap, in case you haven't heard that phrase before, simply means to take a bold, sometimes risky action, especially when you're uncertain about the outcome. You could say, she took a leap and finally applied for that dream job she'd been too scared to try for. Or, moving abroad felt like taking a huge leap, but it turned out to be the best decision of my life. It pairs beautifully with another common phrase, taking a leap of faith, which adds an extra layer of trust and hope into that same brave action. And really, when you think about it, isn't that exactly what learning a new language is too, in its own quiet way? A leap of faith. You start out nervous, uncertain, maybe even a little scared, unsure whether all this daily practice, all these stories, all these new phrases will actually add up to anything meaningful. But slowly, patiently, if you keep showing up, keep listening, keep trying, keep taking that same brave leap again and again, day after day, you eventually look back one day and realize just how far you've truly come, exactly like Mia did, sitting there on that rooftop, finally, genuinely, completely at home. All right, let's pause here for our final big practice moment before we wrap up today's episode. I want you to think back through this entire story, all of it, from Mia standing lost outside that train station to sitting nervously at her new desk, to that terrifying frozen laptop moment, all the way to that warm, quiet rooftop sunset with Leo. Try to summarize the story in your own words, using simple English, out loud if you can. You don't need to remember every single detail, just the main emotional journey: scared, lonely, challenged, supported, and finally, happy and settled. This kind of summarizing practice is honestly one of the most powerful things you can do for your English fluency, because it forces your brain to actively use the language, not just passively listen to it. And let's also quickly review some of the phrases we picked up together today. We learned butterflies in your stomach, for that nervous, fluttery feeling. We learned lump in your throat, for that tight feeling when you're trying not to cry. We talked about feeling overwhelmed when there's simply too much happening at once. We explored craving something, that strong desire for connection or comfort. We used the dramatic image of a city swallowing you whole, and the relief of a weight lifting off your shoulders. We practiced somersaults in your stomach, an even stronger version of nervousness. We discussed the comfort of finally feeling like you belong somewhere. We felt the panic of your mind going blank under pressure, and the sadness of something slipping through your fingers. And finally, we learned the warmth of having someone rooting for you, cheering you on from the sidelines of your life. And that's not even all of them. Let's keep going, because today's episode gave us a really rich little collection of phrases. We picked up feeling sick to your stomach, that heavy, nauseous dread when something goes badly wrong in public. We learned to sweep something under the rug, hiding a problem instead of dealing with it honestly. We talked about resilience, that wonderful ability to bounce back after difficulty. We discussed facing something head-on, confronting our fears directly instead of avoiding them. We felt something bloom in your chest, that warm, growing feeling of pride or happiness. We learned not cut out for something, when a task or role simply doesn't fit who we are. And finally, we picked up two lovely closing phrases: penny for your thoughts, a gentle way of asking what someone is thinking, and taking a leap, or a leap of faith, that brave decision to try something uncertain. trusting that it might just work out beautifully in the end. That's 17 wonderful, natural, everyday phrases in total today, all wrapped up inside one emotional little story. And that, my friend, is exactly how real English learning should feel. Not like memorizing boring lists from a textbook, but like living through an experience, feeling every emotion right alongside the characters, and picking up language naturally along the way, almost without even realizing it's happening. I really do encourage you to go back through today's episode a second time later. Maybe tomorrow, maybe even later tonight, before you fall asleep. You'll be amazed at how much more you catch the second time around, once your brain already knows roughly where the story is heading. That's actually one of the best-kept secrets of real listening practice. Repetition isn't boring, it's powerful. The very first time you hear a story, your brain is working hard just to follow the basic plot. But the second time, or even the third time, your brain relaxes a little, and suddenly it has more space to notice smaller details, catch new phrases, absorb pronunciation patterns you completely missed the first time through. So please, don't feel like you always need brand new content every single day to make real progress. Sometimes, going back and listening to yesterday's episode again is exactly what your brain needs most. I also want to gently remind you, especially if today's story stirred up some emotions for you, maybe you've experienced something similar yourself, moving somewhere new, starting a challenging job, supporting a friend chasing a big dream. That these feelings are honestly a wonderful sign. When you start feeling real emotions while listening to English, laughing a little, maybe even tearing up slightly during the harder moments, that means something really important is happening inside your brain. You're no longer just translating English into your native language and back again. You're starting to feel English directly, experiencing it the way native speakers experience their own language, through emotion and story, not through mechanical translation. That shift, even if it only happens for a few small moments during an episode like this one, is genuinely one of the biggest signs of real, lasting fluency beginning to take root. Before we finish up completely, I want to say something a little more personal, just between us. I know learning a new language, especially at the intermediate level, can sometimes feel incredibly slow, almost frustrating at times. You might feel like you've been studying forever, yet somehow you still miss words during fast conversations. You still hesitate before speaking. You still feel that nervous flutter, those very butterflies we talked about today, whenever you have to use English in real life. But please, please believe me when I say this, every single episode you listen to, every single story like Mia's that you follow along with, every single phrase you repeat out loud, even when you feel a little silly doing it, all of that is quietly, steadily building your fluency, brick by brick, day by day. Progress in language learning is rarely something you can see happening in the moment. It's something you only notice when you look backward, when you suddenly realize, wait, 6 months ago, I couldn't have understood this episode at all. And now here I am, following along easily, laughing at the funny parts, feeling the emotional parts right along with the story. That moment will come for you too, I promise, as long as you keep showing up, keep listening, keep practicing, even just a little bit each day. So here's what I want you to do right now, before you close this episode and go on with your day. First, If you enjoyed spending this time with me and with Mia's story today, please hit that follow button or subscribe button, whatever your app calls it, right now, this very second. Don't wait until later, because later so often turns into never. We all know that. Second, if there's someone in your life who's also learning English, a friend, a classmate, a coworker, someone struggling with the exact same nervous feelings Mia felt on her very first day in a new city, share this episode with them. Send them the link. Tell them about English in Fluency. You honestly never know. Your small act of sharing might be exactly the encouragement someone else desperately needs today. And third, leave a comment or a review wherever you're listening to this. Tell me what you thought about Mia and Leo's story. Tell me which phrase from today you're most excited to start using. Or even better, tell me about a time you felt butterflies in your stomach, or a moment when your mind went completely blank. I absolutely love reading your stories. And honestly, some of you have shared things that have genuinely moved me. And of course, come back tomorrow, because our journey with English in Fluency continues every single day. New stories, new emotions, new characters, new phrases, all designed specifically to help your ears, your understanding, and your confidence grow just a little bit more with every episode. Learning English isn't a race. It's not a sprint to some imaginary finish line. It's more like a long, steady walk. One you take one small step at a time, one episode at a time, one conversation at a time. And I'm genuinely honored, truly honored, that you're choosing to take some of these steps here. With me, with this podcast, with stories like Mia's. Let me leave you with one last little thought before I go. Somewhere out there tonight, or this morning, or whenever exactly you're listening to this, there might be someone just like Mia, standing outside a station, or maybe just sitting quietly in their own room, feeling nervous about a new beginning of some kind, a new job, a new city, a new language, a new version of themselves they're not quite sure how to become yet. And if that someone happens to be you right now, I just want you to know that nervous, fluttery feeling in your stomach, those very butterflies we talked about at the start of today's episode, they're not a sign that something is wrong. They're actually a sign that something meaningful is beginning. Nobody ever feels nervous about things that don't matter to them. So if English still makes you nervous sometimes, if speaking still makes your heart race a little, that's simply proof of how much this actually matters to you. And that alone is something worth being proud of. So, until next time, take good care of yourself. Be kind to yourself while you're learning. Remember that every mistake you make while speaking English is not a failure at all. It's actual proof that you're trying, that you're growing, that you're showing up for yourself. This is Alex, signing off from English in Fluency. I'll see you, or rather, I'll hear you, right back here tomorrow for another story, another episode, another small step forward on this beautiful, sometimes messy, always worthwhile journey toward fluency. Take care, keep listening, and I promise, before you even realize it, English is going to start feeling less like a mountain you're struggling to climb, and more like an old friend you're simply catching up with. Bye for now, everyone, and thank you truly, from the bottom of my heart, for spending this time with me today.